Final year students, good morning everyone and Assalamu alaikum. So we are going to talk about contraception and family planning today. It's basically about family planning methods and how they work and what are the choices. So this class is basically about how to use family planning methods. It's not about counseling and it's not about how to talk to the patient, but that should be usually one more class. But this is basically about what methods do we have and how do they work. Okay, so can anyone tell me why do we need family planning? जितने भी बच्चे आ गए हैं, can somebody try to answer? Can somebody volunteer? I want to know on the chat, so you people can respond on the chat. Yeah, so there is a response to manage finances. Okay, that's very good. That's excellent, actually. Yes, manage finances because we don't have so many resources, and look at the population that we have. And another response from Sana, better mother and child outcome. This is also wonderful. This is excellent because we all know that multiparity, grand multiparity is a very important risk factor for maternal mortality and morbidity. So a mother who's practicing family planning and spacing the births, she would most likely be in better health, and the child outcome is going to be better. One more response from Mifra, to control the population size. This is also excellent because we all know how much poverty we have, how much illiteracy we have, and so many problems of resources. But the population is just exploding, and it's a big population bomb, which is more dangerous than the atomic bomb that we are facing now, and that's a huge problem. So thank you so much for these wonderful responses. So let's talk about what are the objectives of this lecture. So these objectives are for all final year students, basically for the exam purpose. What are we expecting from final year students? So by the end of this activity, participants or final year students should be able to discuss a little bit about, like you're saying, population problems, demographics, and the statistics of family planning in Pakistan. The basic statistics, what is the CPR, what is the contraceptive prevalence rate, things like that. And you should be able to discuss the role of family planning in safe motherhood. Like you said, it's important for mother and child health. So that's a very important feedback. And final years should also be able to list various methods of contraception. This is basically our main objective of today's lecture. What are the different methods? What is the mode of action? What are the side effects of these different methods? And uh, yeah, how do we follow up, and what is their effectiveness? How effective they are, and what is the failure rate of different methods? So you should also be able to describe the mode of action of different methods, identify indications, contraindications, and another important thing is that final year should be able to say a little bit about which method is best for which patient. For example, a patient is hypertensive or diabetic, which method will be safe for her and which method will be contraindicated for her. So that is according to the WHO MEC wheel of 2015. So we'll just discuss a little bit about MEC. And finally, benefits and risks of different methods. So these are very simple objectives of today's lecture. Nothing complicated here. Basically all about the methods. Okay, so just a little bit of introduction. What is the current situation in Pakistan? So what is our population? We all know that our population is really exploding, and now we are the fifth most populous country in the world. Previously, we were the sixth most populous. After India, after China, India, America, Indonesia, and Brazil, we were the sixth most populous. But now we have surpassed Brazil, and so we are the fifth most populous country in the world after China, India, America, and Indonesia. So that's really huge. And we don't exactly know, but it's an estimate that more than 220 million population. And what is special about our population, that most of the population is young population. Mostly our population is less than 30 years old. So this young population that we are producing more and more, due to the lack of resources, this population is getting frustrated. They're not getting education, they're not getting jobs, they're not getting the resources like housing and other facilities. So look at the outcome. What are we going to face very soon? And we are already facing so much poverty, so much hunger, so much illiteracy. So the literacy rate is now 58%. But look at the difference between male literacy and female literacy. This is 75% male literacy, and female literacy is nearly 50%. But again, this literacy, the quality of education, we all know that's very, very poor. So roughly around 25 million children are out of school, and most of these are girl students. Most of these are girls who are out of school, particularly in Sindh and Balochistan. The girls are very, very few who really reach up till matriculation and then higher education. Poverty is 50% live below $2 a day. So that's really huge. And we all know that COVID situation has further aggravated the poverty situation and made more and more people jobless. So look at the traffic situation, look at the literacy situation, and look at the hunger and poverty situation. If you look at the maternal mortality ratio, this has come down a little bit, but again, this is one of the highest in the world. And perinatal mortality, similarly, one of the highest in the world. So maternal mortality is still very high. It's nearly 200 per 100,000 live births. And total fertility rate per woman is 2.86 per. So nearly 3 births per woman we are still having. Okay, so what is the current CPR, current contraceptive prevalence rate? According to the Pakistan Demographic Health Survey of 2017 and 18, it has come down from the previous 35%. Rather than going up, it has come down a little bit. So it is actually 34% only. So that means only 34% of couples in Pakistan are practicing family planning. So you can see the huge majority is not even practicing family planning. So the contraceptive prevalence is one of the lowest in the world. And what is unmet need? Anybody would like to tell me? What do you understand by unmet need? Any final year student? Can somebody define unmet need, or somebody tell me what do you understand by unmet need? Yes, final years? Anyone? What is unmet need? Necessities not fulfilled. So this is Sayyid Muhammad. I can't see the whole name. Okay, so that's very good. That's excellent. So that means that there is a need. There are some couples who actually need family planning and who want to use family planning, but due to some reasons, which may be availability, which may be access, which may be affordability, which may be other reasons that they're scared or something, that they're not using. So that's the need that actually, if we fulfill this unmet need of 17%, those who actually need it and are not able to access, if we just try to cater to this population, our CPR is going to be nearly 50%. So that will be an amazing improvement upon the contraceptive prevalence rate, even if we address this 17% of unmet need. So basically only 25% of couples are using modern methods. And modern methods, we all know, are more effective methods with less failure rate rather than traditional methods. Overall, 34% is the CPR, but 9% are using traditional methods, which are not so effective. And so the failure rate of these methods is quite high. And only 25% are using modern methods like hormonal methods and IUCDs and implants. So if you look at the age distribution, for the younger age group, 15 to 17 years age, the CPR is only 7%. Only 7% of couples who are young, who are sexually active, or who get married or are sexually active, but they practice, only 7% of couples practice family planning. And if we look at the older age group, 40 to 44 years of age, this is a group which does not need family planning, as the fertility is already down in these women. After 40 years, the fertility is already down, but now they want family planning. So that is 48% of the population of this age group needs family planning because they have already had 5 children, 6 children, and they have already completed their family. So that is why the impact is not showing in the CPR, and the impact is not showing in our population statistics. And if you look at the division of urban and rural, so urban, the CPR is 45%, which is better, and rural is only 31%. So we all know that this is because of poverty, this is because of illiteracy, and all these issues. There's a difference between urban and rural population. Okay. So what are the different methods that we have in Pakistan? Let's talk about the methods. Or this means basically how many couples are using which method. So if we look at any method, the CPR is 34.2%. And if we look at female sterilization, this is a large percentage, that is 8.8%. Nearly 9% of women are using female sterilization. So once their family is already complete, once they've already had 6 or 7 children, then they are going for tubal ligation. So again, this is the older age population. Male sterilization, you can see the difference. This is only 0.1% because our men, you all know the social issues that men do not like to have vasectomy, and they would rather have the woman sterilized rather than go for sterilization themselves. And if you look at the pill, these are the modern methods now we are talking about. Pill is a modern method. It's only 1.7%. Intrauterine device, only 2.1%. These are the effective methods we are talking about, which if are used more by more couples, these are the most effective methods. So injectable contraceptions, again, only 2.5%. Implants, only 0.4%, and this is the most effective method. So only 0.4% of couples are using implants. Male condom, a large number are using. So I think majority, most of the frequency of condom is the highest among all methods, which is very good because this is men who are responsible for using condoms, and they are using 9% of the population is using condom, and withdrawal method is also 8%. This is also significant. Rhythm, which is the safe period method, is again 1%. So that's fine. That's also a traditional method. But significant thing is that two of the most frequent methods are being used by men, which is excellent. So usually we think that men are opposed to family planning and they are not allowing their wives to use family planning. But this is very good information, data, which is showing that a lot of men actually practice condom and withdrawal. So they understand the importance of family planning. But basically, these two methods are not very effective. And the failure rate of these methods is again higher than other methods. So if you look at the CPR by province or by region, Punjab as the highest of CPR, that is 38%. Sindh and KP are almost equal. They are around 30%, and Balochistan has the lowest CPR. So the most backward province, unfortunately, Balochistan, as far as literacy and poverty and other indicators are concerned, this is only, this is not even 20, hardly 20% of the population is using contraception. So what are the barriers to family planning in Pakistan? Yes, finally, I want your feedback. So I've written some of these here, but I want your feedback because there are so many other barriers that you might be aware of. So what do you think? Why people are not very keen to use family planning, or what are the difficulties, or what are the barriers that are stopping them? Anything is considered taboo. Okay, so that's very good. Sayyid Muhammad, Pura naam nahi aa raha. Yes, Amara, cultural barriers. Again, this is very important. So there's a taboo कि family planning गुनाह है और गलत है. Unawareness, cultural barriers, very good, excellent. Lack of awareness in rural areas. Yes, that's very correct. Ramsha, Aiza, Amara. Yes, these are all very correct responses, and these are all very, very important because that's illiteracy, unawareness, lack of awareness, cultural barrier, social barrier, and taboo. Anything else? Anything else? Anybody wants to say something different? So many barriers from the demand side. So people may actually need family planning but due to all these issues, they're not able to use. But there are also problems on the supply side. Sometimes the commodities are not available. Sometimes the doctors are not willing to provide because they might also have their own personal beliefs. And sometimes there are no choices or limited choices, and what the patient needs or wants, that thing may not be available. So there's so many issues on the supply side and so many issues on the demand side. So do you think low status of women is also a barrier, that women are not the decision makers in the family, and even about their fertility, they are not given the right to decide about their own fertility, about their own bodies, that how many children they should be having, and at how much birth spacing they should be having a baby? Are they able to decide that, do you think? Do they have the decision power about how much spacing they should have, and when should they have a baby and when should they not have a baby according to their health status, according to their own social status? So this is a big barrier, low status of women, because the gender discrimination is a very, very big issue, a cross-cutting issue, which is across all health and education indicators. That's a very important issue, that women are not able to decide for themselves. They will always say, I have to ask my husband whether to use family planning or not. So it's the husband who decides, or sometimes a mother-in-law who decides, but woman is hardly able to decide anything for her own sake. So another big issue, would you agree with me about this, sun preference? How much sun preference we have in our society? And so this is not only in rural areas, but you all know that this is everywhere. This is even in the educated class. So if we can't say that this is only rural people or illiterate people who want to have a son. I don't know where this is coming from, but it is the majority of our population, even educated, even urban, who wants to have a son, and they will keep on having pregnancies until they have a son. It may be 4 daughters, 5 daughters, but they will continue to try for pregnancy and not choose family planning. So another big issue is poor awareness, like you all said, unawareness and lack of awareness of family planning benefits, and also lack of awareness about the services, where the services are available and what type of services are available and how to access. So that's also a big issue. Another big issue is myths and misconceptions. People are scared about family planning methods. People have so many myths about complications, about side effects, and particularly they might think the pill is going to make them gain weight, and the pill can cause cancer. And also about IUCD, they have myths that it is going to move in the body, or it can go to the brain, and it can go to the heart, and it can just move all around the body. So there's so many misconceptions which need to be corrected by the healthcare provider who is providing the service. So the counseling is very, very important, and a big barrier is lack of counseling, good quality counseling, giving the time to the patient of addressing their myths and misconceptions so that they feel more satisfied with the service and they try to use family planning. And so yes, myths is a big issue, and then limited accessibility to services and stock outs. So like I said, the supply side, commodities may not always be available. The reliable methods that patients want to use may not be available in that service, and then access may not be appropriate or affordable. So, like I said, counseling is a big issue, and poor quality of services, doctors not talking properly, not counseling properly, not addressing the patient's concerns, not giving them adequate choices, and addressing their myths and misconceptions. All these are issues and barriers to family planning in Pakistan. And if we want to improve our CPR, we have to address all these barriers on multiple fronts, not just one barrier. Okay, so what is the relationship of family planning with safe motherhood in Pakistan? So can you see this house of safe motherhood that we are trying to build here? That motherhood should be safe for all women and for all babies, and no mother should die in pregnancy, and no baby should die in childbirth. So that's a huge issue. And if you look at the pillars, how many pillars do we have here? So this is basically built by WHO, this house. And if you look at the pillars of family planning, what do you see here? What is the first pillar? The first most important pillar is the family planning, followed by antenatal care and clean, safe delivery and essential obstetric care. And then there's postnatal care also, which is not mentioned here. But if you look at the first pillar, the most important pillar is family planning. Because why do you think it is most important pillar? Final year, anybody? Any feedback, any comments on this? Do you think it is the most important pillar of safe motherhood? Can we save a lot of mothers by practicing family planning? And how do we save mother's life by practicing family planning? Anyone? Yes, final years, come on. So Amara is saying, because if there's no family planning, subsequent steps won't really follow. Okay, so that's great. Very good. Not exhausting the mother, Sayyid Muhammad. Sayyid Muhammad, yes, that's very important. Hussain, okay, I'm so sorry. Yes, Sayyid Muhammad Hussain. Not exhausting the mother, that's really great, because you know that multiparity, grand multiparity, having 10 children, having 12 children, our women are still having so many children, and they're all so much severely anemic that they are exhausted basically. So they're considered to be machines who are going to produce a child every year and not look after their own health, and not look after the baby's health also, who is already very small, and have another baby. Every year, if they are producing more and more children, that makes the mother's health really very compromised. Better health of the mother and the baby to achieve good health of the mother. So that's very, very important. And do you know how many pregnancies are unwanted in Pakistan, and how many mothers go for termination of unwanted pregnancy? Supposing a mother already has 5 children, 6 children, and she cannot afford to have another baby, but she has not choose family planning because she doesn't know how to. And if she gets pregnant, she goes to an untrained health provider, and she gets complicated abortion or septic abortion or a perforation in the uterus. What will happen to her? Is she likely to survive, or is she likely to die in septic abortion or unsafe abortion by an untrained provider? So nearly 50% of pregnancies in the world and also in Pakistan are actually unplanned or unwanted because because of lack of access and lack of awareness. Women do not want pregnancy, but they get pregnant and then they go for unsafe terminations. So we can save all those mothers also. We can save them from multiparity, we can save them from septic abortions and unsafe abortions and uterine perforations. So nearly 50% of pregnancies who are unplanned, which are unplanned and unwanted, and who go for termination, all these are avoidable deaths. These you all know that abortion, unsafe abortion, is third most common cause or fourth most common cause of maternal mortality after hemorrhage and preeclampsia and sepsis. Abortion is the fourth most common cause of maternal mortality, and all those deaths are totally avoidable if we prevent unwanted pregnancy by family planning. Then we save all these mothers who go for unsafe termination. And also, you are very right, to achieve good health of the mother and to avoid anemia and to avoid grand multiparity where mothers are really exhausted and more likely to die in the next pregnancy. All these are avoidable deaths, and that's why family planning can prevent around 35 to 40% of maternal mortality. That's research by WHO, that around 35% of maternal mortality can be totally prevented by just family planning. And then we have other pillars, and we have primary care and basic maternity care and the basic foundation you can all see here, that is equity for women or gender equality, which where the women have more empowerment and more rights as far as their bodies, and they can decide for their own health, they can decide for their own life when to have a baby and when not to have a baby. So that's the foundation, basically, that's very important. Okay, so this is WHO evidence. What can FP do for us? What can FP do for our population and for our country? FP, that's family planning, can reduce maternal deaths by 35% and child deaths by 10%. It can also reduce poverty and it contributes overall to women's empowerment. And FP is one essential component of all SDGs. So what are SDGs finally? Anybody knows about SDGs? Can anybody respond to the question? What do you think we're talking about here? What are SDGs? Family planning is the one essential component of all SDGs. Anyone? That's final year. Come on. Sexually transmitted diseases, but this is SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. This is Syed Mohammad Hussain again. That's great. You have to respond to everyone, Hussain. I think you are responding privately. Please respond to everyone because this is excellent feedback. Sustainable Development Goals. And these are 17 goals that we have to achieve by 2050. And we are very, very backwards in our commitment to the international organization, United Nations, that we have committed to achieve all 17 goals, and we cannot achieve them. It's impossible unless we practice family planning. Unless we try to control our population, we will not be able to meet our commitments and goals, these sustainable development goals. So this is the one intervention, this is excellent intervention where we can try to achieve all the 17 sustainable development goals. And another important thing is that family planning is cost effective and evidence based. So it is not that we want to use it without evidence, without research evidence. It is totally evidence based and cost effective. We don't need much resources for family planning, or we don't need a lot of finances for this. So this is the WHO MEC wheel, final years. This can be asked in your exam. One of the objectives is that final year should know how to use MEC wheel and how to decide about different patients, about what family planning method is best for which patient. and what is safe for which patient and what is not safe for any patient, that thing should be avoided. So we'll talk more about this next day. So let's talk about the methods. How many methods do we have? We have lots of methods, although every method is not available in Pakistan. But again, most of the methods are freely available from the government side, and they are available free of cost. So then let's talk about natural methods. We'll talk about hormonal methods, and then there are some non-hormonal methods, barrier methods. We have emergency contraception, which is very important as a backup method. And then we have permanent methods or sterilization, which is again not very practical because this is only used once the family is already complete, and which may be too late for birth spacing or for controlling the population. So we will not try to emphasize the permanent methods, but the modern methods, that is hormonal methods and non-hormonal methods, which are the most effective methods of family planning. So a little bit about natural methods. What do you think are the natural methods? Because a lot of people will, you will find in your practice that a lot of people don't like to use modern methods. They are scared, or they're scared of side effects. So a lot of couples might say, "Ke Dr. Sahab, hame natural apna karna hai. We don't want to use any medicine. We don't want to use any copper tea or coil, and we don't want to have any side effects. So we just want to use natural method." So although these methods are not very effective, they have a high failure rate, but again, something is better than nothing. If couples are only, they desire to use only these methods, again, these methods should be available. They are very important because they are a choice, and choice is always the patient's choice or the client's choice. As if they are not given what they want to use, then of course their compliance is not going to be good. So it's better to guide them about how to use natural methods rather than saying ki nahi, natural method is not effective and you should not use. So there's the fertility awareness method, and you all know this is the safe period or the rhythm method. Then second is the lactational amenorrhea method or the breastfeeding. We'll talk about this. And the third one is withdrawal method or coitus interruptus method. So you can see I'm also going to show you these methods. I have the tray with me here. Can you see this? Can you see the beads? Yes, finalists, can you see this bead? Which is a guide to the patient about the calendar method or rhythm method. All these methods are very similar, whether we call it rhythm, whether we call it calendar method or fertility awareness method. We can use these beads to tell the patient about her menstrual cycle. And how do we tell her about the cycle? So can you see this beads here? I have this beads with me. This is the menstrual cycle. This is there to explain to the patient about her menstrual cycle and what is the safe period to have intercourse, where the chance of pregnancy will be the least chance or the lowest chance of getting pregnant. What are the days where they can safely practice intercourse and the risk of pregnancy will be very, very low in those days. So we tell them that this red bead, can you see the red bead, final years? This is the first day of the period. Right? So period is starting from here, first day of LMP, and then the rest of the 6 days are the brown beads. So this is 7 days of patient's menstruation or period time. That's the 7 days. After that, there are around 12 white beads. Can you see this? So what does the white beads indicate? White beads indicate the fertile time, because we know the ovulation takes place on day 13 or day 14, most likely. And so this is the time. Immediately after the period, the time for fertility starts. So patients who want to have a baby, patients who want to conceive, we tell them to have intercourse during this time. But patients who do not want to have a baby, we tell them to avoid intercourse during these 12 days because the chance of pregnancy will be really high if they have intercourse during these 12 days. And after day 19, this is day 8, from day 8 of period to day 19, This is the maximum chance of fertility or the fertile time. And from day 20 to day 20 to day 28 or 29, depending on the cycle, up till the next period, this is the time that is the safe period. This may be 8 days, this may be 10 days, depending on the cycle. So you can understand that this will only work if the patient is having a regular menstrual cycle. And if she's not having a regular cycle, then this will be not very effective method, and the chance of failure will be very, very high in these patients. Okay, so this is just to explain to the patient about when to have intercourse and when to avoid intercourse, in order to, if they only want to use this method. But you know that this is not very effective, and anytime there might be a mistake and they might be having a higher chance of pregnancy. So what can we do in those patients? If they only want to use this method, rhythm method, and sometimes if there's a mistake in having estimated time of fertility, or there's a mistake and they have intercourse, what can we tell them to have more effective, to make this method more effective? What can be the counseling message? We should tell them that they should have a backup method, and backup method can be emergency contraceptive pill. So if they think they have made a mistake in the estimation of fertile time, then they should always have the EC pill available in their home as a backup method, in order to improve the effectiveness of this method, natural method. Okay. Okay, so let's look at fertility awareness method more. What is the failure rate? So failure rate is really high. 24% of couples will have a failure rate, and they will have unwanted pregnancy. And you can all imagine the consequences of having unplanned and unwanted pregnancy, how risky it is for the mother's life and for the fetus life. Okay, so 24% failure rate, and we can improve upon this if we counsel the couples about emergency contraception as a backup. So emergency contraception, remember, that can be used as a backup method for all other methods, in order to improve their chances of success. Prediction of fertile period and time of ovulation. So we talked about the beads. These are the beads, family planning, which can be available in the clinic, and which can be used to explain to the patient about the fertility time. Abstinence from intercourse during fertile days, or use the condom. So this is another very important message which can be given, that if they're having intercourse during the white bead time, like this is the time, 12 days from day 8 to day 19, if they want to have intercourse during this time, then they can use condoms only during this time, and during the safe period time they can avoid. If they don't want to use condom, then they can avoid condoms during those time, and they can use EC pill as a backup. So both condom and EC pill can be used as a backup for all methods. That should be an important message. Okay, so the important condition in order to have a better success rate for this method is that menstrual cycle should be between 26 days to 32 days. If it is more irregular cycle or oligomenorrhea, if the patient is having a period after 2 months or after 1.5 months, or it's a very frequent cycle, then this method is not appropriate, and it's not going to work very well for that particular patient. It cannot be used in women who have irregular periods, during breastfeeding also, because there's no cycle. Usually during breastfeeding, the cycle becomes like amenorrhea, and so the patients will not know when they are going to ovulate. So it's not practical for lactational amenorrhea women, and it's not appropriate for perimenopausal women, again because their cycles are more irregular, anovulatory cycles, and this is not going to be effective. Okay, so let's talk about the LAM, or what is LAM? The LAM method is lactational amenorrhea method, or the breastfeeding method. So what is the counseling message that we give to the patient during lactational amenorrhea method? If somebody wants to say, somebody wants to use only this method, and they don't want to use any other modern method like pill, or they don't want to use the copper T or implant, then we have to tell them that what type of breastfeeding should it be. It should be exclusive breastfeeding. If it is not exclusive breastfeeding and the mother is giving the bottle as well as her own milk, then this is not going to work, because we know that fertility will come back if the hormones FSH-LH are not suppressed by prolactin levels. Then she will be having a period very soon, and the patient will be at risk of conception. So the condition is that we have to tell them that they have to exclusively breastfeed so that they are amenorrheic. Amenorrhea means then they are, amenorrhea means anovulation. That means they will not be ovulating. As long as they are amenorrheic, they will not be ovulating. That means that they are safe as far as pregnancy is concerned. As soon as the period starts, and the period can start even after 3 months. If the mother is not exclusively breastfeeding, the period can start even after 3 months or 4 months, and then that means ovulation has started randomly, and the patient is at risk of having a pregnancy which may be unwanted pregnancy, and the patient will again, she might go for termination, and she might risk her life if it is an unsafe termination. Okay, so these both things are important. That is why the method is called lactational amenorrhea method. That means if she is not amenorrheic, then this method is not going to work. And how does it work? What is the mode of action? Prolactin, basically with exclusive breastfeeding, high prolactin levels prevent menstruation because they suppress FSH-LH. So they will prevent menstruation, and they will also prevent ovulation and conception. If it is practiced properly with both these conditions being met, then it is really very effective, but only for 6 months. Its effectiveness 98%. That means failure rate is only 2% if both the conditions are met. But it is only 98% effective for the first 6 months of life, first 6 months of breastfeeding. Because why is that so? Because after 6 months, what happens? Yes, final years. What happens after 6 months? That the effectiveness of LAM goes down. From 98%, it really goes down after 6 months. What happens after 6 months? Why is this change in effectiveness? Yes, anybody? Prolactin levels go down. Weaning starts. Yes, that's excellent, Hera. Weaning starts, and that's why the frequency of breastfeeding goes down. And so that's correct, Amara. Prolactin levels go down because the mother will be breastfeeding at less frequent intervals, because the baby starts eating food. So as soon as the weaning starts, the effectiveness of LAM goes down, and the patient can get unwanted pregnancy because the baby is still very small and still on breastfeeding, and that will be an unwanted pregnancy where most of the women will come back to you and they will request termination, and then that will be really very bad if they go to an untrained provider, right? So 60% women start menstruation by 3rd month, because in Pakistan we think that we are breastfeeding a lot, but actually exclusive breastfeeding is being practiced very in a very low proportion of women. Most of the women are practicing both the things. They are practicing breastfeeding, but also bottle, and they're also practicing, they're giving sometimes tea, sometimes water, and that's really bad. So that's not exclusive breastfeeding, and only 27% of the women or the breastfeeding mothers are actually doing exclusive breastfeeding. So in order to make it a reliable method, the counseling messages are again very important. Most FP methods can be used safely except COCP during breastfeeding. So COCP, we'll talk about COCP more, that this is contraindicated for a breastfeeding mother, especially first 6 months, because we'll talk about it later when we're talking about the pill. So let's talk a little bit about coitus interruptus or the withdrawal method. So we talked about initially how common is withdrawal method. A lot of couples are actually only depending on the withdrawal method. Then you ask the couples, what do you want to use, or what are you using for family planning? Most of the time they will say कि डॉक्टर साहब हम लोग तो अपना मेथड यूज करते हैं, हमारा बेबी नहीं होगा, और हमारा बेबी नहीं होता, हम लोग बहुत अच्छा एहतियात कर लेते हैं. So most of the time when they mean एहतियात, that is the natural method is withdrawal method. So the credit goes to the men. Sometimes, a lot of cases, the men are really motivated and they use withdrawal method a lot because a lot of men are actually concerned also. They are concerned about their wife's health and they will actually say कि डॉक्टर साहब नहीं हमें दवाई नहीं चाहिए, we don't want to use any medicine because that may not be safe for my wife, and I would use family planning and I would use withdrawal method, and if the control is good then this can also work very well, although the failure rate is high depending on the compliance. But we can use some backup method with this and it can be more effective. So withdrawal is a very good method actually because it is harmless. There are no side effects, no complications, and people are usually very happy. A lot of people, a lot of couples are happy that they are not going to have any side effects. The only thing is that the failure rate is high. It's not very effective because depending on the husband's control or the male partner's control, the control may not be good, and we know that we need only one sperm for fertilization. So even if one drop of semen goes into the uterus, the pregnancy will happen. So it's important to give them the messages that EC pill, and if they use condom along with this method, the effectiveness can be highly improved and it will be much better. So it's a very traditional method, oldest contraceptive method. A lot of couples are comfortable with withdrawal method. It prevents semen from entering the woman's vagina, and it depends on the husband's or male cooperation and compliance of the male partner. So totally depends on the male partner. The female has no role in this method, and that's why failure rate is high. If the husband is not motivated or they are using it irregularly, this method is not being used effectively, then the failure rate will be really high. So, but we can tell them about EC pill in case of accidents. If they forget to use or if they think that discharge has happened inside the vagina, then they can use EC pill immediately, which can be a very good backup, and the method can become more effective. Okay, let's talk about the pill. So let's talk about the the oral contraceptive pill or the hormonal method. You all know about combined pill because combined pill is available. It is freely available in the government setup, in all the public sector clinics, tertiary care centers, and even in family planning, PWD clinics. It's freely available and it's almost free of cost. But even if, I think they charge only 10 rupees or so for three packs for 3 months. So it's really cheap and it's very effective method. So what is the effectiveness and what is the failure rate of OC pill? Because a lot of women, they're very comfortable with the pill. वो कहते हैं कि हमें we don't want to keep anything in the uterus, doctor साहब, we don't want any coil, we just want a pill because it's easier to take orally and we are going to remember to take the pill. So a woman who is comfortable with choosing the pill and who thinks she will remember to take her pills, it can be a very effective method, it can be excellent, but depending again on the patient's compliance. So look at the difference in the effectiveness. If it is not used very well, not used very with good compliance, effectiveness is only 91%. But it is 99% effective if it is used perfectly. If the woman is really, she remembers to take her pills very regularly, she's not missing her pills, then pill failure is very low. It's as effective as a tubal ligation because this is 99% effective. Failure rate is only 1%. But in practically, this is very difficult to achieve because we are all humans and we can all forget, even if we think we don't forget, but we can all forget sometimes. And then the real effectiveness comes down from 99, and it can be anything in between 90% to 99%. But again, what can be the backup? Backup can be EC pill. If a woman has forgotten her pill, she can be asked to use EC pill as a backup. As soon as she remembers, she can use the EC pill to prevent pregnancy. So what is the mode of action? Yes, final years. So what does it do? How does it cause family planning? It basically acts as both estrogen and progesterone combined pill. It inhibits FSH-LH with a negative feedback, and that is why it inhibits follicular formation and inhibits ovulation. So that is why it is very, very effective. And what do you advise the patient? One tab daily at bedtime, because usually it causes some nausea. So it's better to take at bedtime so that patient doesn't forget also, and she will not experience nausea, which can cause a bad compliance sometimes. Sometimes they stop taking the pill due to nausea, so you can tell them to take at bedtime. If she forgets one tablet, take it as soon as she remembers next day, and also take at bedtime. So you tell them that if you forget one pill, next day, as soon as you remember, you have to take the pill. And again, next day, you have to take your own pill also again at bedtime. So next day, she will be taking two pills, one missed pill and the second, her regular pill at bedtime. So that's two pills. And similarly, if she forgets for 2 days, again, same advice. But if she forgets more than two pills, more than 2 days she has missed her pill, then the risk of pregnancy will be really high, and she has to she has to use the EC pill also, and she can use the condom also. But again, the risk of pregnancy will be there. So what are the non-contraceptives? So pill, basically in gynecology, we use the pill for a lot of other problems also, not just for contraception. It can be used for lots of other pathologies, lots of other diseases, and it's really a great medicine with a lot of safety profile and research, because you you will read in a lot of conditions that it's actually a very good treatment for so many things. So if a woman is not having regular periods, or if she's having heavy periods also, menorrhagia or heavy menstrual bleeding, pill is an excellent treatment because it causes lighter periods. Irregular periods become perfect periods, regular periods on time, and amount of blood loss is much less, 50% reduction in blood loss, because estrogen is a thrombogenic hormone, and it reduces the amount of bleeding by nearly 50%. So we can improve the patient's anemia, we can treat her anemia, we can improve hemoglobin by giving the OCP, so that the period amount is less and cycle becomes perfectly regular. If patients are having dysmenorrhea, again, this is an excellent treatment for primary dysmenorrhea because it inhibits ovulation, and young girls who are actually experiencing primary dysmenorrhea due to ovulatory cycles, this will prevent that dysmenorrhea to absolutely. It protects against breast cyst, benign cyst of breast, and ovarian cyst, follicular cyst also. By inhibiting ovulation, it can prevent ovarian cyst. Sometimes it can treat ovarian cyst, follicular cyst also. It protects against two cancers. So usually we only talk about that it increases the risk of breast cancer, which is only very little, very, very slight increase in breast cancer, which also occurs after a long time, after 10 years or 15 years of use. It can increase slightly the risk of breast cancer. But important thing is that it is reducing two cancers, which are very important. Particularly, it reduces the risk of CA ovary, nearly 50% reduction in the risk of CA ovary, which is a lethal cancer. We all know that this is the worst prognosis cancer, the major killer of cancers, gynecological cancers, and it also reduces 50% by 40 to 50% the risk of CA endometrium. So this is very important in counseling, that two cancers, gynecological cancers, are actually prevented by using OCP. Even if we use it for only 6 months, the advantage is there. Another important advantage is that it prevents osteoporosis. It can be used for polycystic ovarian syndrome, patients who are at high risk of osteoporosis because they are not ovulating, their periods are coming after every 3 or 4 months or 2 months, and they are at risk of osteoporosis because they might be estrogen deficient. So it's good for osteoporosis, it is good for acne and hirsutism. When we give Dian 35 to PCO patients, that improves their hirsutism and acne. It can treat premenstrual syndrome also. So it's a very good treatment for all these conditions, for all these indications. ये इसका एक्सक्यूज मी, तो माउस गिर गया. बस 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 मिल जाएगा. Thank you. Okay, so what are the side effects? The disadvantages of oral contraceptive pill. So there can be minor side effects like nausea, like breast tenderness, headache, depression. Um, so, yes, and then there can be some major complications or some major problems which need to be kept in mind all the time when we are giving, when we are prescribing pill. So we talked about MECV. If you remember, we talked about medical eligibility criteria, which should always be in front of the healthcare provider, whoever is providing service, that we have to give family planning according to the medical eligibility criteria and after ruling out the risk factors for thromboembolism, particularly patients who are at high risk of thromboembolism due to their family history, due to their hypertension, due to their weight. If they are obese patients, they are older age group, they are above 35 years, above 40 years, and also they are smokers or obese and they are hypertensive, they are at risk of DVT and thromboembolism. That will be a most important contraindication for oral contraceptive pill because we know it's a thrombogenic hormone and it can cause DVT and pulmonary embolism that may be dangerous. Patients who already have breast cancer or even who have a family history. The family history is a relative this thing, but again we have to try and avoid oral contraceptive pill in patients who have, particularly those who are suffering from breast cancer themselves. Does not protect against STIs. So this is an important message for counseling again, that if they want to prevent sexually transmitted infections like gonorrhea, like chlamydia, like HIV, so uh, they have to use condoms along with the pill because pill will not reduce the risk of STIs. Okay, so contraindications are very important. Again, we have to use the MEC wheel. So never forget the MEC wheel. The medical eligibility criteria should be our guidance, that is the WHO guide, which should always be used for every clinic that is conducting family planning service. And MEC is actually now an app. If somebody asks you about family planning, you can download the app. MEC is an app. You can go on your smartphone. You can go to the Play Store, and if you type MEC Wheel WHO, that is an app that you can download on your smartphone, and that method you can prescribe according to the MEC Wheel. So you will know what is a which patient it's contraindicated and which patients have an indication according to that app on your smartphone. You don't even have to have the wheel. Actually, I have the wheel here. So if you see here, this is the wheel. This is the MEC wheel, which has all the indications on the periphery. And there is, these are, if you can see here, all the methods on one side. These are the methods. These are the dark blue things. These are the indications. These are the patient conditions, or these are the diagnosis basically. And the different methods are here. And then there are categories. Category 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll talk more about this, but these, according to these categories, you can know you have to rotate the wheel according to the indication. For example, if she's a breastfeeding mother, you have to put it on postpartum, and you will know which method is indicated and which method is not indicated. And similarly, you can use your app on your smartphone, and you can just rotate this. It rotates in the app also, and you can find out which contraindications are there and which are the indications and whether it can be safely used or not used. And let me show you the pill also. So here, finally, can you see this pill? Can you see the pill? So this might be kept in your OSCE station in the exam also. You might be asked to identify the pill, and then you can be asked some questions about it. What are the indications? What are the contraindications? What is the mode of action? And how to use it. Not how to use it, because if you don't have a patient usually, but if you have a patient, then you can be asked about telling her how to use this pill also. one daily at bedtime, and all 28 pills. This is Famla. This is a Chabi Wali Goli. Basically, Famla 28 with 28 tablets. She has to take one tab every night at bedtime, and she will have a period when she's taking the brown tablets. Okay. Okay, the contraindications are very important. Women above 35 years of age, particularly who have obesity, smoking, hypertension, diabetes. These are the risk factors for DVT and thromboembolism. Women who have heart disease, congenital heart disease or rheumatic heart disease. We all know that this heart disease increases the risk of DVT, thromboembolism. So this will be a contraindication. Migraine, classical migraine with aura, that's a contraindication. Any active liver disease like cirrhosis, that's a contraindication. And breast cancer itself or family history of breast cancer is also a contraindication. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the injection. Let me show you the injection. So can you see this ampule here? Yes, finally, can you see this? Can you see this? Yes, so what is the ingredient in the injection? This is the Depo-Provera injection, the 3-monthly injection, which is intramuscular. And what do we have in this? So if we keep it in your OSCE, you can be asked about what is the ingredient and how to use it. First of all, you will be asked about identification. So identify the injection and what is the DMPA. So what is DMPA basically? Depomedroxyprogesterone acetate. And what is the dose of this injection? The dose is 150 milligram. It's written over the ampule and it is given. How is it given? It's given every 3 months intramuscularly. Yes. So again, a very reliable method. What is the failure rate of this method, final years? You can be asked about the failure rate of all methods. Yes. So if not exactly, then at least you should have a rough idea. So that failure rate, depending on, again, compliance of the patient, the failure rate may be, usually it is more than 90% effectiveness. So failure rate is only around 5 to 6%. But again, depends on the compliance. Dose is 150 milligram DMPA. It's again, mode of action is it inhibits ovulation and 3-monthly injection intramuscular. What is the most common side effect? It can cause menstrual irregularity. Usually it can cause amenorrhea. So that's the most common menstrual disturbance, although we call it not a bad disturbance, because if the patient becomes amenorrheic, that's actually not bad, because even with breastfeeding, women become amenorrheic and they're not ovulating. That means they're not ovulating, and it's good for anemia also. If they are anemic and the hemoglobin is low, the hemoglobin becomes better because they're not bleeding every month. So patients should be counseled that there's nothing wrong with the amenorrhea and that's fine. So, but usually this is bad. Weight gain. Sometimes they gain weight, which is only very slight. It's 1 to 2 kg. And most of the time, if the women are gaining weight, they have to be told that it's because they are not following a proper diet or they are eating junk food. Most of the time, they gain weight due to that. But they will blame everything on the injection. If they gain a lot of weight, they will say, I'm gaining weight due to injection, which is actually not true. So the research shows that the weight gain is not more than 2 kg per year. If they've used it for 1 year, the maximum weight gain can be 1.5 kg to 2 kg, not more than that. This is a problem. The patient should be told that fertility return can be a little bit delayed, at least around, because they become amenorrheic, and by the time the period comes back, sometimes it can delay fertility up to about 6 months to even 1 year sometimes. So this needs to be counseled. Delayed return to fertility is more common with injection. It's not common with the pill. As soon as the woman stops the pill, she will conceive in the next cycle or after that one. So within 2 to 3 months, she will conceive. But after stopping the injection, the return to fertility may be around 6 months to 1 year delayed. This is important. That's why we say this is not a very long-term method. If a woman wants long-term method, this is not a very good method option for her, because in long term it can cause osteopenia and osteoporosis due to continued anovulation, estrogen deficiency. She can have risk of osteoporosis. So this is also DMPA injection, but Cyanopress is actually a new intervention or a new injection, very similar to DMPA, very similar to Depo-Provera. But the important difference is that this is not intramuscular. This is subcutaneous injection, and the advantage is that patient can use it herself at home. She may not need to come to the healthcare provider, because if the compliance is poor and she's missing injection because of the compliance problem, then that is not a good thing. So we can and this is also free of cost, and the government is providing this. This is also 3 monthly injection, but the dose is much less. It is 104 milligram pre-filled, single dose, it's a 3 monthly injection similarly, but subcutaneous injection, and very easy to use. Patients can be trained to use it themselves so that they don't have to come to the hospital for every injection, and may have a better compliance. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about progestogen only pill or mini pill. We'll not talk a lot about it because usually this is not available in Pakistan all the time, and also the effectiveness is also not very high, but it's a very good drug for breastfeeding mother, because the important thing is that this is only progestogen. It does not have estrogen. So like we said, a breastfeeding mother cannot use combined pill, estrogen progesterone pill, because the amount of milk production will be less in a breastfeeding mother. So we don't want her to use combined pill, but she can use mini pill. If she wants to use the family planning pill, she can be given progestogen only pill, which will not affect breast production, and which will also not increase the risk of DVT and thromboembolism, because you all know that risk of DVT is highest during puerperium, even more than during antenatal, during more than pregnancy. So puerperium is a very high risk time for prescribing combined pill which has estrogen. At that time, we can give progestogen only pill or mini pill, so that the risk of DVT will not be there. And another thing, it will not affect milk production, so a mother can safely breastfeed the baby, and later on she can be switched on combined pill after 6 months. So this is also quite effective, 91%, not as effective as the combined pill, but 91% effective. That's not bad, depending on the compliance of the mother. And again, she can be advised to have backup EC pill. The mode of action is not inhibiting ovulation, but what does it do? It makes the cervical mucus thick. That's how it acts actually. And so if the cervical mucus becomes thick, it will interfere with ascending sperms. So it interferes with fertilization, not allowing the sperms to go up into the uterus and fallopian tube. Advise 1 pill every day at the same time. So important side effect is risk of breakthrough bleeding, irregular bleeding. If the woman is not taking it at the same time every day, there will be irregular bleeding or spotting and breakthrough bleeding. It is safe for breastfeeding. No increase in risk of DVT because there is no estrogen and there's no risk of PID. Lowers the risk of PID because by making the cervical mucus thick, it interferes with ascending bacteria like gonococcus and chlamydia, so that it reduces the risk of PID also. And only has minor side effects like mastalgia, bloating, and mood changes. No major side effect. So it's more safe than combined pill. Okay, so let's talk about the progestogen only implant. So right now in Pakistan, we have the implant which is available is not this one. This is actually this is the previous implant that we used to have. Norplant. Right now we don't have this one, but we have the Jadel, which is 2 rods and which is effective for 5 years. So this is available in Pakistan in all the tertiary care centers, all the PWD family planning clinics, and this is the subcutaneous intradermal implant, which is very effective for long-acting family planning. ये थोड़ा सा जरा हेल्प कर, ये क्यों आ गया? ये मैं इससे कर रही हूँ ना, ये आ गया ना, ये काम नहीं कर रहा. हाँ. Yes. So we have this Jadel available here. There are these are 2 thin rods. I'll show you the Jadel. So can you see this rod, final years? This is the rod, and this is the trocar for insertion, which goes into the intradermal area of the arm, the inner arm, and this goes into this. So there's we put it in this and then we push it through the inserter. Okay, so you can see the videos on the YouTube I have, which you're not basically, in the exam you will not be required to do insertions. That's why I'm not going into the insertion thing. You might only be asked to identify. So you will only be asked to identify the implant, and this is the inserter tube and the trocar. And you will not be asked for insertion of this Jadel. Subdermal insertion, and this has got levonorgestrel 75 milligram, and effectiveness very, very effective. I would say the most effective method, highest effectiveness among all the contraceptive methods, and effective for 5 years. So it will need removal after 4 to 5 years as the hormone storage is finished. So basically we didn't talk about Sino implant because Sino implant is available only in China. This is manufactured in China. This is similar thing, but because this is not available in Pakistan and Jadel is available in Pakistan, so usually we use Jadel, which is for 5 years, and Sino implant, which is available in China, that is for 4 years. So there are multiple modes of action for the implant. Number one, most important mode of action is that it inhibits ovulation, around 50% inhibition of ovulation, but there are also additional modes of action that it makes cervical mucus thick, because we know this is progesterone only. So progesterone always makes the cervical mucus thick. So by doing this, it further interferes with ascending sperms, also interferes with PID, reduces PID, so prevents passage of sperm into the uterus, and it also suppresses the endometrial maturation. So that is why the effectiveness is very, very high, because there are multiple modes of action, and also does not allow implantation, even if there is pregnancy, by altering the endometrium. So that's why it's very, very effective. What are the contraceptive benefits of implants? So number one, it is the LARC. You all know what is LARC, long-acting reversible contraception. And there are only two methods that we have for LARC. One is the Copati or the IUCD, and second one is the implant, the intradermal implant. These are the two long-term reversible contraceptive methods, right? So patients who want for long-term, who want 4 years, 3 years contraception, it's better to go for one of either of these methods, either IUCD or implant. So effectiveness begins 24 hours after insertion when inserted through the during the menstrual time, during the menstrual period. Pelvic examination is not required because pelvic examination is only required for IUCD insertion, because we have to rule out vaginal discharge and PID. So in order to avoid PID, we have to exclude vaginal discharge. That's why pelvic examination is required only for IUCD, but not for implant. It does not interfere with the intercourse like condoms. It does not affect breastfeeding, so it can be inserted immediately after delivery. That's very important. As soon as we have delivered a patient, we can insert this. Even if she has a cesarean section, we can insert this inside the operation theater, or if she's in labor room for normal delivery, we can insert it in the labor room. It should be available everywhere, because that's a good opportunity that patients can be offered as soon as they have had delivery. It does not affect breastfeeding. Immediate return of fertility after removal. As soon as it is removed, patient can conceive again. Return to clinic required only for removal or side effects. No other follow-up is required, right? It contains no estrogen, so no risk of DVT, no risk of harmful effects like thromboembolism, and very, very few contraindications, or hardly any contraindications. It's safe for everyone. So who can use Jadel? Any reproductive age. Even young patients, even older patients after 40 years, there's no contraindication. For young women who are nulliparous also, who are even for unmarried. If you look at the MEC wheel, it will show you that even unmarried girls who need family planning, it is very safe for them. It is not going to affect fertility in future, and not going to cause any other harmful effects. It can be used in young women, even nulliparous, those who are married but they don't want to conceive initially for 1 or 2 years. It can be used for them also, because it's very, very effective with no compliance, no need to take everyday pills or injections, and this is just one time, so no compliance is required. Any parity, including nulliparous. Highly effective method, long-term contraception, doesn't interfere with breastfeeding, 6 weeks or more postpartum. It can be inserted immediately, right? And immediately after abortion. It can, if woman doesn't want to conceive, we can avoid unwanted conceptions by immediately inserting it after delivery and after abortion, or even after DNC. Okay, so barrier methods, we didn't discuss barrier methods initially. So barrier methods is, we have male condoms and we have female condoms. So usually we don't use female condoms a lot. This is the female condom. Let me see this. This is the female condom. And this is the male condom. You can all identify, right? This is the male condom. This is the female condom. So what are the advantages of barrier methods? This is the problem actually. Problem is that the failure rate is quite high. 82% effectiveness, so that means nearly 20% failure rate. Female is even less effective, 79% effective. But what is the main advantage of condom? Especially the condom that we use in Pakistan, that is the male condom. What is the main advantage? That it offers double protection. It protects against unwanted pregnancy, and it also protects against STIs. So it protects against all the major sexually transmitted infections. But the problem is that failure rate is high, and For male condoms, we need the compliance of the male partner. If he's not motivated, if he's not compliant, if he doesn't want to use it, then the risk of unwanted pregnancy will be very high. So it's basically dependent totally on the husband or on the male partner. Cervical caps usually we don't use in Pakistan. Again, it's only 88% effective. It does not protect against STIs because it just covers the cervix. It doesn't cover the vagina. It covers only the cervix, and it can be used in combination with spermicide to improve effectiveness. But mostly this is not used in Pakistan. It's not availability is also an issue. So finally, we come to IUCDs. So IUCDs are very, very effective. Again, one of the most effective long-acting, it's a LARC method. Like I said, LARC method, long-acting reversible contraception, we have only two choices. One is the implant and the other one is the IUCD. 99% effective and totally reversible. As soon as we remove, patient will get pregnant and she can conceive immediately. So what are the types of IUCDs we have in Pakistan? We have copper T. This is very, very effective and very long term. If we don't remove, if the woman doesn't want to conceive, particularly perimenopausal women after 35 years, they have completed their family, but they don't want to go for tubal ligation, so they can go for copper T. And this will last up till their menopause. So 12 years, 10 years, and it can also be only be removed after the menopause. Second one is the multi-load. This is effective for 5 years. This is also available, but not always available in Pakistan. Usually we have this copper T, which is most of the time available. And then we have this Mirena or levonorgestrel releasing intrauterine system. So this is effective for 5 years. This is available in Pakistan, but the problem is that this is quite costly. Although we say this is cost effective, because this is also a very good treatment for menorrhagia, very good treatment for heavy menstrual bleeding, as after some time, initially some irregular bleeding, but after 6 months to 1 year, it causes complete amenorrhea, so the patient's anemia becomes much better. So patients who don't want to have periods or who have heavy menstrual bleeding, it's a very good choice for them, as this has got a hormone, levonorgestrel, progestogen only. So this is a very good choice for perimenopausal women who are having heavy menstrual bleeding. But the issue is that this is quite expensive. It costs about 8 to 10,000 rupees in Pakistan. So women who come to tertiary care, we should offer them free of cost, but most of the time it's not available with the government within our stores in the tertiary care. So the availability is an issue and the cost is an issue, but these two are available, and most of the time we use copper T, which is very effective and very long term. Okay, so what is the mode of action of IUCDs? It interferes with, basically this is the main mode of action according to WHO. According to WHO, the main mode of action is that it is interfering with ascent of sperms inside the uterus. So it doesn't allow it to go up and fertilize the ovum inside the fallopian tube. It interferes with implantation also in endometrium, so that is also a mode of action. And with Mirena, the progesterone, the progestogen, which is levonorgestrel, it makes the cervical mucus thick. So again, it interferes with the ascending sperms. Okay, so once again, what are the advantages? It's a long-acting reversible contraception. Like we said, it is one of the two LARCs that we have along with implant. There's no issue of compliance. Once we have inserted, patients don't have to use anything. They don't have to use condoms. They don't have to use any backup. There's no compliance needed, and it's totally free of any compliance issue. It does not interfere with intercourse. It does not interfere with breastfeeding. It is very safe for breastfeeding mothers. So it can be inserted immediately after delivery. immediately after abortion, immediately during cesarean section, which is called postpartum IUCD. So throughout breastfeeding and even after that, it will only be removed when the patient is ready for another baby and she wants to conceive. Mirena added advantage, reduces menorrhagia, and copper IUDs can be used as emergency contraception also. So we all know that one of the choice for emergency contraception, particularly if the woman does not want to conceive in the near future, we can use copper IUCD as a EC emergency contraception and as a regular, it will be followed by regular contraception. So what are the side effects of IUCD? Very few side effects. Most common side effect is heavy periods, sometimes irregular periods initially, usually in the first cycle or so, they can be irregular spotting or so, but usually regular periods, but can cause a little bit heavy periods, which can be very easily treated by mefenamic acid and tranexamic acid during the heavy period days. If the patient is having heavy periods for 2 or 3 days, we can give them tranexamic acid and mefenamic acid for a couple of days, and the heavy period will be okay. Sometimes it can cause dysmenorrhea, which is again treatable by mefenamic acid. It does not protect against STIs. Actually, vaginal discharge is a very important contraindication. We must always do vaginal examination for every patient before insertion of IUCD. So it does not protect against STIs. Expulsion can happen, particularly more common with postpartum IUCD immediately after delivery. Expulsion rate may be higher compared to interval IUCD, that is insertion after 6 weeks of delivery. The expulsion rate will be maybe slightly higher. Perforation and ectopic pregnancy. Does it cause perforation, final years? I want final year feedback here. Can it cause perforation? Can it cause uterine perforation? Anyone? Yes. And how? How does it cause perforation and why? If done by an inexperienced person. So Ramsha is absolutely right. Osama is absolutely right. Yes, perforation is a complication, but only if the person, the healthcare provider who is inserting, is inexperienced. Person is inexperienced, if they have inserted too deep into the myometrium, it can of course go perforate the uterus and go into the peritoneal cavity. It can go into the omentum and usually lodge over there. But generally, it does not cause perforation after if the insertion is correct. If we have inserted it correctly, placed it at the fundus, then it does not perforate after that. So that means it does not carry a battery in itself. It does not move after being inserted correctly. Correct insertion, then after that, there is no risk of perforation. Patient should be told that if it is being done by the right person and the insertion is correct, it will not move later on into the peritoneal cavity. So that is important message. Does it cause ectopic pregnancy, final years? Anybody? Can it cause ectopic pregnancy? How many people say yes? Yes. Aiza saying yes. Osama is saying yes. Okay, so what should we do? How much is the risk of pregnancy? So you are right, I agree, ectopic pregnancy. But how much is the risk of pregnancy with IUCD? Look at the effectiveness. It's 99% effective. The pregnancy rate is less than 1%. So the ectopic will also occur in if the patient conceives. Less than 1% are going to conceive. And if that patient conceives, of course, the risk of ectopic will be high. So overall, yes, less than 1%. Right, absolutely right, excellent. So the risk of pregnancy itself is only less than 1%, 0 point something percent. But in those women who have a risk of conception, those 1% of women who will conceive, of course, the risk of ectopic will be higher compared to intrauterine pregnancy. So that means overall it is reducing ectopic pregnancy. In general population, it is reducing ectopic by reducing the risk of overall pregnancy. Okay. So overall population, it does not increase the risk of ectopic, because it is preventing pregnancy, so it is preventing ectopic also. But in the less than 1% of population where there is a failure rate, or where the woman is conceiving in spite of IUCD, in those women there is a risk of ectopic pregnancy, and we must rule out ectopic pregnancy. Okay, what about infection? Does it cause infection, final years? Any feedback? Anyone? How many people say yes? Isaiah is saying yes. Anybody else? So most of the time, same final year students are responding. I would like other people also to respond, please, because only these few students, Aiza, Ramsha, Hussein, Osama, only these very, very few final year students respond. What about the others? Others have all gone to sleep, I suppose. Yes? Yes. So Aiza is saying yes. Anybody else? Anybody else saying yes? Okay, Ramsha is saying yes. Okay, if proper sterilization is not followed, then infection can occur. So that's very right, Ramsha, absolutely right, because infection is also caused at the time of insertion. It's a sterile, basically very small, its copy is a sterile thing. It comes in a sterile package. So once we have inserted, after that, it does not cause any infection later on. Only it can cause infection during insertion if the healthcare provider is not following proper aseptic technique, proper sterilization or infection control technique. Only then there will be infection. Once it has been inserted in a proper way with the proper technique, infection control, then there is no risk of infection. Okay, there's a question, I think, from Risha. IUCD is treating heavy bleeding, so how it can be its side effect? Okay, so yes, Risha, you are right. So basically, all IUCDs are not treating heavy bleeding. We are talking about we talked about different kinds of IUCDs. So there is a Mirena. There is Mirena, which is levonorgestrel IUCD, which can control heavy menstrual bleeding. Right? That's a different kind of IUCD which controls heavy menstrual bleeding, which is Mirena. Only Mirena controls heavy menstrual bleeding. But usually we use copper T, which does not control heavy bleeding, but actually it promotes heavy bleeding by causing a little bit inflammation in the endometrium. It can cause heavy bleeding sometimes. In some patients, there's a side effect of heavy bleeding by causing endometrial inflammation. But in a progestogen IUCD, that is Mirena, that causes endometrial atrophy. After some time, 6 months or so, it causes complete endometrial local atrophy, and that is why it completely causes amenorrhea or treatment of heavy menstrual bleeding. So it depends on what type of IUCD is being inserted. Okay, so what are the contraindications? STI, pelvic infection. This is the most important contraindication. Whenever the patient is complaining of vaginal discharge or any kind of, we are suspecting any pelvic infection, particularly this foul smelling discharge, sexually transmitted infection, gonorrhea or chlamydia, this is absolutely contraindicated. So that's why we always do vaginal examination before insertion of IUCD. That is also written in your MECPIL. That is the medical eligibility criteria. This is a very important contraindication as it can cause ascending infection and PID. Suspected pregnancy is, of course, a contraindication. Large fibroids is a contraindication because that distorts the cavity, and then the IUCD may not be very effective in those cases. But a small fibroid, less than 3 centimeters in size, should not be a contraindication. Mirena is contraindicated for breast cancer patients because breast cancer patients, have estrogen and progestogen receptors. They are ER, PR positive mostly, most of them. So that is why all hormonal contraception is absolutely contraindicated for breast cancer patients. And similarly, even Mirena is contraindicated if the patient has breast cancer. Okay, so what is PPIUCD? We talked about postpartum.
Hello. Hello. Hello.